Alright, hey guys, welcome back. Today we'll be looking at the top 5 casting choices for the MCU films. So this means I will not be covering earlier Marvel films such as this Blade, Nicolas Cage's Ghost Rider, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, all of that. Films like The Punisher, Deadpool, Daredevil, any of these will not be covered in these top 5. So without further ado, I'm just gonna go ahead and show you on in fifth place pretty much is surprisingly Chris Evans as Captain America. Now, this is kind of strange because I felt that the Captain America films were definitely the best uh, as a single characters films among most of the other MCU movies. Winter Soldier especially being one of my favorites. I felt that Chris Evans, however, was not really the Captain America that we would expect as the ones we have seen in the comics. The Cap you see in the comics more so often is someone that a lot of other characters approach, seek advice, and he always has the best thing to say, right? He always finds the right words. Of course, in the MCU films, they portray him as being inspirational and all of that, but we don't quite see him kind of advising people or giving a speech that's meaningful. More than awful, he just has these quips and replies, and it's not really anything that he plans or he thinks of. It's very much overshadowed by the character of Tony Stark, and it's very different from that in the comics, because in the comics Captain America truly pulls a lot of these strings. So that's pretty much the way I see Chris Evans's role of Cap. But regardless, despite the kind of inconsistent character, plot-wise and all of that, Chris Evans in his own right is a fantastic Captain America. But of course, the other picture is not Cap. Anyway, spoiler alert. So yeah, he in his own right has done a fantastic job with the portrayal of Captain in his own way. So he definitely was not the Cap from the comics, but he has established himself as a very unique Captain America, and I believe that in comics to come, we may see them, like kind of take pieces of the way Chris Evans played Cap. But yeah, it's amazing how he did so surprisingly well as an actor in the film. But I felt that his casting choice is not really the best, at least out of the top 5. Which takes us to the next one, which is Chris Hemsworth's Thor. So for the Thor films, I felt that Hemsworth's best portrayal of Thor was definitely in the very first film, the one where he is clearly shown to be some kind of a crazed warmonger. He gets, like kicked out of Asgard by his father. He gets banished basically by Odin to Earth, and then he's forced to try to find his way and be humble. And his portrayal of Thor, that's kind of thinks that he's a higher being and all of that, and the way he is forced to try to be down to earth to fit in. I felt that it was very much true to what Thor seemingly is in the comics, which even the way Thor speaks, if you read most of his dialogues in the comics, they are very short, very simple, but very kingly. He always thinks that very highly of himself. He always finds that he is better than everyone else because he naturally is, and being the heir to the throne of Asgard, he's seemingly quite powerful, and so that's kind of the way I find Thor. Spoiler alert again, oops. But anyway, the Thor in the comics was a lot more fierce and a lot more consistently that, whereas in the MCU films, Chris Hemsworth is kind of put into a very comedic portrayal of Thor, which is not very accurate to that of the comics. And unfortunately, that of course is not entirely his fault. That is pretty much the script to blame. And yeah, but I mean, we even got to see him lose his eye and prepare to be King Thor, like that of in the comics, thanks to Taika Waititi's, scene of Hela plucking his eye out, basically. But I don't think we'll ever get to see something like this because We instead got a fat Thor, and that was pretty much what they did to him. So the Thor from the comics is really, really far, and his portrayal of Thor on screen was not really powerful, not really strong, not really very, Asgard like. It was very much a kind of a feeble Thor, to say the least, and not the kind of Thor that you want to see as the mighty Thor. This guy is not that mighty. The only amazing, like impressive scene we actually got of him, of course, was in Infinity War when he went up against Thanos, but unfortunately that was cut short. Thanos had to click himself out, and then we pretty much just see him, like kill a weakened Thanos in the next scene. Nothing much to his character, but yep, that's pretty much it. As for the next one, you probably saw the spoilers, so yes, it's Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. His portrayal of Doctor Strange is very much similar to that of the comics. Not only is it comic accurate, his natural kind of tone that he sets in his charisma, the way he behaves himself on the scene in the scenes of on screen, it's very very similar to the Doctor Strange in the comics, where he's kind of like a very all-knowing kind of being. He knows a lot of things, and despite all that, he tries to keep this very cool tone about the way he portrays himself, because he knows that despite him being so powerful and being the sorcerer supreme and all that, there are always threats that even supersede him, and he still has to be aware. And as the Ancient One said in one of the films, he has to realize that it's not about him. So despite him being kind of egoistic person at the beginning, he sets in to become a lot more, like decent, I would say, of a person, and a little bit more responsible as the new Sorcerer Supreme. So we kind of see a very good portrayal of that by our Benedict Cumberbatch. A lot of people questioned his. A lot of people question every casting. Perhaps sometimes they don't really think the fact that these, filmmakers, when they perform these casting, they don't just pick and go, I want this guy. They have a wide variety of choices, and they usually have a lot of, research and support done to come up with these casting choices. And I was really happy when they casted Benedict Cumberbatch, and his Doctor Strange was amazing. And I know we'll be seeing a lot more of him in the films to come. So, yep, I'm really looking forward to that. After this, we have Tom Holland's Spider-Man coming in second place. So, I mean, you're probably guessing who's first, but nonetheless, let's just talk about the amazing Tom Holland. He is truly multi-talented as the Spider-Man. He's very much a younger Spider-Man. He's not like the kind of Tobey Maguire like Spider-Man. He's not really a man yet, but he's kind of this young, cheeky kid who, can hold his own, takes on the fights. The only unfortunate thing about the Spider-Man's portrayal by Tom Holland is that his script writing is so bad that he is forced to be in the shadows of Tony Stark. But this is just in the MCU's case, let alone looking at Tom Holland's casting alone. He's very, very similar to the comic book Spider-Man, and he's naturally acrobatic. He has great facial expression. Even while he's in the mask, his quips and his jokes, the tone he sets on the screen is very much believable. I would say overall he was probably the best choice anyone could have picked on Spider-Man, and I do believe that he is definitely the best Spider-Man to be casted. Although I feel that Tobey Maguire's films are so great, such as this comic book scene, which was clearly very much inspired both from the movie, and the movie also inspired other comics. And the movie took some of these from the comics took some from the movie. That's how amazing that Spider-Man sequence was in Tobey's film, but I felt that Tom would have done an equally good, if not better, job given the chance. And considering his naturally athletic abilities, his good charismatic personality, I felt that he was probably one of the best casting choices in the MCU. Now, here comes the final one. The last one, of course, being Tony Stark as Iron Man. Now, this guy, Robert Downey, Tony Stark as Iron Man. Yeah, I mean Robert Downey as Iron Man, but I guess Robert Downey is Tony Stark now. So it's pretty much that. He was so influential in his casting that he changed the Iron Man's character forever. You know, he changed the way Iron Man had been portrayed in all these years in the comics, and now he has basically made comics portray Robert Downey as Tony Stark. Compared to the old way the Iron Man was portrayed, a lot of things came to change, and now whenever we see Iron Man, we see Tony Stark, and that's he's come a long way. I mean, look at this, and looking at the new comics now, it is quite a big advancement, and for a character that has picked up, especially a character that is of a nature that's technology based and all of this, it's very nice to see him finally be able to play a role that is relevant to our era. And Robert Downey, basically, yeah, he turned out to be the guy who carried the MCU. But the only thing that I don't really like is the fact that they made this Iron Man kind of completely envelop the entire MCU with his power. He was basically the reason for the Age of Ultron. He's basically the reason for Civil War. He's also the reason for the events in Endgame. He's also the reason for Spider-Man's Far From Home, Spider-Man's Homecoming. He's basically overshadowing all the other characters because of the way that they have decided his plot to be. But that's not Robert Downey's fault. He himself is just portraying the character as he sees fit. Another thing that they kind of toned down, I would say, in the films is the fact that he's supposed to be a genius, billionaire, playboy, and philanthropist. We don't really get to see the playboy and philanthropist elements as much in the films as we do in the comics. We get to see a lot of talks about charity and stuff. We only got to see that in the events of Civil War when he catches up with Spider-Man to try to recruit him. We can see that he's covering some kind of charity, and that's about it. And then we don't see him being a playboy after the first and second film because pretty much he gets into an established relationship with Pepper Potts and then he's not really a playboy anymore. But I guess that's the way they wanted to portray Robert Downey in order to make it more, I guess, child friendly for the MCU. I guess that's pretty much it because most of their fans are children, and a large variety of the audience base is based off children's views. So I guess it kind of makes sense that they did need to tone down Tony Stark's character a bit, and Robert Downey did a fantastic job at that. So that's pretty much the way I look at this. So that's it from me. So yep, fifth place is Chris Evans, followed by Chris Hemsworth. He would have been even better if he had a great script. Benedict Cumberbatch is doing absolutely fine. The script is decent. We just want to see more of him already. Tom Holland is probably fantastic casting choice overall. Is multi-talented, truly fits into the character of Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and he does both of them really, really well. Only unfortunately, I really wish that he doesn't get overshadowed by Tony Stark as much. And thankfully, now that Tony Stark is dead, unfortunately, I have to say that, but thankfully now I hope that he doesn't get to be thrown around into more films that say that I'm going to kill you because of Tony Stark again, which is what happened in Far From Home. Mysterio is just another person who's pissed off at Stark. So we don't want this anymore. Enough of Tony Stark. Enough of the Iron Man. Let's give us proper Spider-Man films, and then we'll get to see more of Tom Holland, and maybe he will even overtake the place of Robert Downey to be the most influential and best casting choice, because Robert Downey's casting choice was truly something that changed Iron Man forever, and we will never see him the same way again. We'll never get to see this anymore. And well, it's good to know that, because now we'll get to see more of this amazing Iron Man that's gonna keep on dominating its series in time to come. So that's about it from me. Let me know what you guys think. I'll probably be covering the top 5 non-MCU Marvel casting after this, so I'll try to make up something cool for that one, because there's a lot more room to make things out. I know a lot of people like to make films on the worst casting choices, but I don't think that that is necessarily a thing, because that kind of it's kind of okay. Like, if you really want to pinpoint that out, maybe I'll think about it, but this is more fun. I say the best is better. So yeah, that's about it from me. Thanks for watching, and hopefully we get to see a pretty cool Doctor Strange film. Yep, looking forward to that. Adios.